Guys, good morning. It's 10:35, and as promised, we've been trying to start right on time to be respectful for all of your times. Remember, the flow of today's meeting is town hall from 10:35 to about 11, and then from 11 to about 11:30. May go beyond that a little bit depending on how engaged you are with Jay. But we're gonna stop around 11:35 to keep the program going. So. Town hall, each week as we go along, I really look for guidance from also you. I open up the floor with a couple of things, and then of course we're going to go around and see what's coming up for all of you. It's April 21st, and the emergency order is set to lift around May 15th. But again, if people are looking for opinion, right? Based on what Cuomo was saying yesterday, that it's supposed to be a unified front. I'd be looking for evidence from other states as to where we're going if you're looking for when we're going to be opening up. But I would be safe to say a couple of things on this call. Number one, I should have started by saying this. I hope all of your family is safe and well, and we're all processing in different ways. And thank you, Paula, yesterday for Mindful Monday. Really appreciate that. That was a good exercise. And, as I mentioned yesterday, there are days that I get dressed up for work, and there are days that look like this, just because personally for me, that's what feels good. Some days I feel like just locked and loaded and, button down shirt. And then there are days I feel like, I just want to throw the sweatshirt on and see what type of work I can accomplish. So, that's personally what's been working for me. So sorry, sorry I was a little bit all over the place. I should have opened with that first. So each week as we go along with this town hall, though, we're continuing to look for answers, and that's personally what I look for as I continue to try to lead this company to the right direction for what it's going to look like when this is all done. I just want to say a few things though, and a couple of notes that I wrote down. Number one, and it's actually what's interesting, it came up for me when Paulie said it yesterday, and I want to bring it to the table here, and that's acceptance. Acceptance is this, acceptance of the business and the way it's going to be done when we get out of this. And what I mean by get out of this is I want you to pace yourself to create an expectation that's realistic. And personally, for me, I have to personally watch that, right? So I'm going to talk about myself. Personally, I have to watch that. And what that means is that accept the fact that even though we're going to probably shoot out like a cannon because everybody wants to go out there, the challenge is I don't know necessarily that the business will act as such, where it just shoots out like a cannon the way it was before. And what that means is so many agents were so used to getting a call, let's say from Zillow, and the buyer's ready to go, buyer's ready to make an offer, and then boom, deal goes out after showing the buyer one property. What I would say is that the new norm would probably be that it's going to be a little bit of what they call a normalized pace, normalized. Okay, because if you look at the data in times of transition and down markets, buyers acted a little bit differently. They thought about it a little bit more. So I want to try to hopefully in the next few weeks pace yourself for this. So this way you don't panic when they open up and buyers are not buying and buyers are making sometimes ridiculous offers. Now this is just my hypothesis. It may not be, it's something that I believe, it's an educated guess as to where the market is going, and perhaps you'll make your own. This is just years of experience thinking that we were already in transition, and when we open up to the marketplace, we'll probably be in a full transitional. And how will we work during those times? Well, I think that if you pace yourself, you have to have patience. And that's something that I'm setting myself up. So I'll speak for myself because you guys are all running your own individual businesses, and perhaps something that I share today with you will hit you, right? So, and it's something that Paulie brought up yesterday about acceptance. Accepting the fact that the market we had before probably is not going to be the same. And that's okay. This is what I want to say. It is okay that it's changing. But please be careful by putting something in your head that says the pandemic caused this. Because what will happen is personally, what has happened for me in the past, remember, I'm going to keep talking about what's happened for me in the past, is once I let something external bleed inside, I look for answers that are not going to help me. So what I mean by that is that if the market is transitioning, then I start looking for answers. Well, what can I do to help this market? I just keep drowning myself in things that I cannot control. And I'm talking about business, folks, right? The virus is something different. What I'm talking about business right now. So the answers I need to look for is, how can I operate in a way in which I can generate new business, consistent business in this new marketplace? Of course, I didn't follow my own rules. I said do not serve. So in this new marketplace, that's personally what I'm setting up for. It's not doomsday. I'm pacing myself. So that's why I made sure when I got on this call, I'm not setting the stage for doomsday as the media probably will portray. Now, what they are portraying is this V-shaped recovery. And what V-shaped recovery means is the next 2 quarters is going to be way down and third, fourth quarter going to be way up. Guys, whatever the model is, I would still pace yourself. Be careful of watching those models because this is not the stock market. So that means the buyers will look at this data and they'll process the data. That's why I want to warn you in a good way, or be mindful, right? Let's use some powerful words. Instead of warn you, be mindful that this data may not be indicative of how the real estate market will work, because the real estate market is not the stock market. And it's not as volatile. It's not, it may be in markets like, Las Vegas, secondary markets where, or Joe LaCicero mentioned in Tampa, there was a 40% adjustment in pricing in 2008 and 9. But what's interesting is he still made a living. And when Jay Pitts gets on here, he'll also talk. He started in 2008 as well. So hopefully you'll hang around for my interview with Jay Pitts. He started in 2008. So hopefully this town hall, each week as we progress to opening, it's helping you pace yourself. Setting the expectation, because if you don't set the expectation that the market is transitioning, you'll come out and believe that we'll shoot out like a rocket, we'll get that V shape, and the market will go back up, and probably the market will go to a more normalized market where pricing will probably slide. It will, and that's okay. Why is it okay? Because if incomes are going down, the affordability index will go down, so therefore pricing needs to adjust, and the interest rates are so freaking low, where could they go from here? So the economy, I don't know if they can go to interest rate zeros, and we'll get on Dimitri Kogan on the end over here, but I don't think interest rates will go to zero. So what else, what could help alleviate that monthly expense? And that's the price. And it's okay. I want to keep repeating to you, it is okay, it is okay, it is okay. It's a more normalized function, because when you say it's okay, right, acceptance, as we talked yesterday about mental acceptance for yourself, it will also help you accept the fact that the market of the past is gone and here's the market of the future. And not because of the pandemic, because once you start talking about pandemic, it creates this doom and gloom that sets us off on a non-productive level. Why can I speak of that? Personally, it's happened for me in the past. So, and what happened for me is during the meltdown of 2008, I did the same thing that many agents are doing today. And today I've done the same thing. I just do it less often because I learned from my previous experience. I'm not a perfect being. So I learned from my previous experience. That's what makes me better today in setting myself up here. And no, not conspiring, using facts, right? Think about how people react to the pandemic. Now think about how you'd react to the real estate market. People will blame external factors, right? I couldn't call until September. That's why my business is down. The pandemic happened. That's why my business is down. I couldn't leave my house. That's why my business is down. With technology today, we can still stay in touch with people. So I got about 4 more minutes, and then I'm going to give everybody the floor over here. So what can we do? Well, last week we looked at market data, and it sounds like you guys gave me some good feedback on that. But week by week, it's very, very hard to get week by week sample size. It's not really necessarily indicative of where the market is going, because we are frozen in time. So if we're frozen, the market data it's very unclear why, because on Al Fazio's meeting this morning, there are closings happening, some are not happening, and it's very confusing. So the data we have is, personally for me, it's not necessarily, it's indicative of what's to come. So, but as agents, as humans, we're always looking for answers. And I think the best answer that we can look at is from inside and relationships, because the more relationship you have, if those people that you have relationships with are ready to buy or sell, they're going to stick with it. Because the market will move, guys. The market will move. I promise you that. So hopefully, as I wrap my portion of the town hall piece, hopefully you've gotten a text message from me and you reviewed any Remax technologies we use. It was a consolidation of whether it's Booz, First.io, Photify, Megaphone, a lot of the Remax tools. And of course, naturally, we're providing some tools as well, but we haven't hit those yet. Boomtown, Dotloop, and BombBomb. I know that BombBomb and Dotloop are doing a webinar soon. Pick and choose what's going to be right for you in the next round. Because my suggestion, and it's been going on in my mastermind groups, is the person that's prepared for semi-automation is the person that wins when this is all over. Semi-automation. So, and remember, agents, including myself, okay, in the past have said, I didn't have time. And those same agents, and by the way, I'm not talking about one particular agent on this call, it's a general statement. Agents said, I didn't have time. And most likely from my mastermind groups, who, leaders leading other leaders, probably when this happens again, they will also say they didn't have time. Meaning that even during this 1 month or 1.5 month time frame, they didn't have time because they had to tend to a lot of other things. So what that means is, the good news is for agents that are making time to carve out what it looks like for their business are the people that are going to be way ahead of the curve when this kind of opens up. Because Al Fazio was talking before about cleanliness of the listings, making people feel safe, new languages in the contracts, listing agreements, always, wearing masks, making people safe, wearing booties, or, people who took their shoes off before may not want to take their shoes off. They may want to put those booties, from the hospitals. So we think about what that reality is, when this opens up, and how do we keep people safe? But one of the things that looks like it's going to be the new norm is this, right? How do we adopt meetings with other customers, right? Be able to meet them in the office, be able to meet them in the house, be able to send them Dotloops. So if you're not using Dotloop today, and you say your customers will not use Dotloop, they will have no choice. The same way people resisted social media and said, well, I don't know how to use Facebook. I don't know how to use WeChat. I don't know how to use Instagram. I don't know how to use a cell phone. They figured it out because they had no choice. So it's the same thing now when we come out of this. Do you know how to use Dotloop at a high level? Do you know how to send listing paperwork? Do you know how to send buyer paperwork? Do you know how to use Zoom? So I think if you were to ask me, Mike, what's one thing I need to do right now? I would learn how to, besides generating new customers, I would be learning these technologies, or rather things that can help you communicate with the customer. Because I think what will happen is, I think that, and this is again my opinion, is that agents who figure it out will probably do more deals, and it will continue driving out the agents who are doing very few deals. Because what will happen is the customer will like the experience they might have with a particular agent, and then more customers will be gravitating towards that particular agent or team. What experience are we giving the people? Because when the transaction pool, and my final minute over here, the transaction pool has been and probably will be, okay, millions and millions of dollars of commissions per marketplace still. What piece of pie are you getting? Right? Have you improved your Zillow profile? Have you improved your Realtor.com? Did you know that Realtor.com is doing live stream option on their website of listings? Because if you had to look at like two major portals, we're talking about the Zillow Group owned and Realtor.com owned. So hopefully you're taking some notes and thinking about, well, what are the things I can do? What are the things I should focus on? So hopefully this is helpful. You know, Remax on the back end, they have a lot of great webinars going on. That's great. Be careful of doing too much. As always, 4 things you can do in your business, just as a final reminder: lead generation, lead conversion, client care, and education. It's still in that order, even at home. So that means is when you're trying to break down your day, go in those 4 levels. And I'm sorry, I'm saying, I want to be apologetic for saying this today. You know, I've had, just so you know, and I say here at a tough phase, we've had some people indirectly pass away. And it does not mean that I'm not concerned for my family and my friends, and not to end on a somber piece because we're going to go to this town hall, but I have a duty to help agents at Remax Edge have a business. So at the first week, you know, I was really just nervous about putting any content out because I was being mindful of those that are losing their loved ones. And it's really hurtful, quite frankly. So far, it's 3 for family and friends that have passed away from COVID-19. So I stay here with a smile. I stay here with just moving forward, because the challenge is when this all finishes is that if we're going to stay in the real estate business, what's the next steps? You know, and personally for me is I'm looking at it as, you know, this is much grander scale. You know, but I take it as if someone were to pass, you know, how would my business operate? Because the challenge is that I'm dependent on my business to feed myself and my family. So I have a job as the leader of this company to make sure that, number 1, we're okay, you know, hopefully. But second is to continually come back to you with stuff that could be helpful to your business. Because at first I thought I was being insensitive, and I'm having a heart-to-heart moment with all of you. I thought I was being insensitive by posting up material and things that might help our agents. So when I post up this stuff, I said, wow, maybe I'm being insensitive. I'm working too hard because I care only about money. And the reality is this, okay, Remax Edge cares, you know, we're gathering up, and I haven't posted that too much. I don't want you to feel pressure. So we've already taken care of a lot of donations. We have not going out externally yet. But I have to make sure that you guys are ready to go. And I personally would dig deep and take that time to mourn and take that time to control your own self-care. But you must not forget that you have a business to run right now. You have a business to run right now. If you forget that, then within 2 to 6 months, just as when you were brand new agents, you may not have a business. And that's just a fact. That's not fear-based. That is just a fact, because just like Remax Edge is making sure we're moving some stuff around, and I appreciate all those that are cooperating with getting our files in, because we need to have projections for the company to make sure we keep the doors open. We've got lease obligations, we've got Remax obligations, we've got a lot of obligations. So you must look at what your obligations are and what you can do going forward. So I hope this was helpful to some degree, especially this is sensitive times. I really do. I hope this was helpful. And for those, I would love your feedback. Continue your feedback that you're giving me. If there's something that you feel that I'm being, you know, that you can give me a little pointer. Hey, Mike, you know what? You should have went this way, that way. I'm open, because these are just very interesting times, and nobody, including someone who's leading a company, is perfect. So please continue to give me that feedback. So what's coming up for you guys? Anybody have anything in the chat boxes they'd like to talk about? Because we're gonna really ramp this up. But Jay Pitts is a really cool guy, and I know he'll be on here in about 6 minutes or so. Anything coming up for any of you guys? And as I promised in the past with town halls, the first round of town halls, as soon as you said something's coming up for you, I'd call you into the screen. Just if you don't feel comfortable, just post it in the chat group, and I'll just say the question and I'll answer it. So anything coming up for anybody here? Okay, so I'm going to have Dimitri Kogan. You're still on the line. I haven't really checked. Dimitri, you're still there?
Yep, I'm sorry, I'm not around. I had communication issues. Somebody upstairs streaming multiple things, somebody downstairs streaming multiple things, and they all forget about is working. So I'm here, whatever you need, let me know whenever you're ready for me to check in.
Wait, Dimitri, so you were a little muffled. Was the problem? What were you saying?
Ready to whenever you need me to check in, let me know.
Okay, we're having trouble hearing you on audio.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Sorry, give me one moment. I'll try this without Bluetooth.
Sounds a little better now.
Okay.
Before it was sounding a little muffled.
Okay, how about now? You guys hear me better?
Oh yeah, beautiful. Perfect. Yep.
Okay, awesome. Mike, shh. You Marco, pressione, that's popcorn. All right. Sorry, guys. Just a quick market update. I joined your meeting a little bit late because I had a meeting with my crew, and we actually got some really good news. A lot of banks were worried about people getting new loans and then not making payments on those. So there has been some new guidelines that have been sort of confirmed. They're still not final, so we don't have the final wording on it, but that should be a good thing as far as the approvals and the rates coming up. Again, just giving you an update that there's always updates. We have these meetings every morning, so the guidelines are changing. Loans are closing. You know, there's some difficulties with getting all the parties involved, but everything is closing. New clients are coming in. We're seeing new contracts. We're seeing people signing contracts on those virtual tours. People are interested. I'm getting a lot of phone calls. People do still think that the mortgage is at 0 2%. It's not the case. Just Mark, but our business is moving.
That's good news. Can you share, Dimitri? Though there's been some rumors going out there. So Chase moved to 700 credit score, 20% down. What's going on industry wide? Is it bank to bank? What's going on with that? I would say, I don't want to call it rumor because it's out there. Chase said 700, 20% down.
No, it's not a rumor. It is exactly what it is. The Chase changed their policies as far as lending. They're sort of.
What does that mean for the whole banking industry? Is that these other products that are available? Is it all moving towards that? What's coming up from there?
A lot of banks are following suit, not exactly the same way as Chase did, but the guidelines are getting tougher. In some cases, it might not be 700 credit score. Some banks will require to have some reserves, especially if somebody's self-employed or there's an investment property involved. Fannie and Freddie are changing their guidelines. There hasn't been any formal updates to the guidelines as far as Fannie or Freddie, the conventional loans, right? So they're still within the same 620 credit scores. They are adding some overlays. Some banks are adding some overlays. So it really is case by case scenario. So more than ever, we ask you guys to speak to, if you have a live loan, just make sure your clients are speaking with those loan officers. If you have somebody who's interested in purchasing and it's just the first step they're taking, make sure that they speak to a loan officer. We're available for you guys to help. Me and Nick, the guys. If anybody has any questions, every situation has to be really looked at, particularly right now when it comes to income.
And when you talked about, a lot of our agents in our office, they're working with customers.
You're breaking up, Mike. I didn't get what you said.
How about now? Yep. Can you hear me now? I think we're losing Dimitri. Dimitri, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Now I can hear much better.
Okay, good. Thanks, Russ. So a lot of our agents, they have customers who might have owned a construction company, might have owned a restaurant. Some of these buyers, it may not be a product that you consistently work with often, but can you give me some feedback on that? If they put 50% down payment, are there any changes that you believe that might be coming up in the near future with that type of product? Stated income product, as I think they call it.
Stated, I'll be very honest with you. As far as right now, stated income programs are more or less, everybody has them on hold.
They have them on hold for now. Got it. Okay.
I can't speak for Asian banks. I'll be honest with you, and I don't want to profile by no means, but I don't know about those, but all brokered stated programs, they are more or less on hold.
And why are they on hold though? Because we know banks. I'll just say a couple. East West Bank, Cathay Bank. Those are some of the banks that were very heavy with these loans. Why would it be that they're slowing these loans down? Just out of curiosity, because if they're following Fannie and Freddie guidelines, what would be?
They have nothing to do with Fannie and Freddie actually.
Okay.
So they are portfolio products.
The
A lot
portfolio
of times,
products,
a lot of times when the bank lands on a program like this, it's backed up by hedge funds. It's backed up by more or less hard money sort of situation. So the risk involved is much bigger, since there's such uncertainty in the market, and both in the real estate market, they kind of put those on ice.
Got it. Okay, so now I get it. So basically, it's primarily portfolio lending, and that's why banks may want to pull out of it or freeze it a little bit because they don't know how much cash they'll have available for that type of product.
Exactly. You're gonna see a lot of mortgage banks going under. Unfortunately, a little bit unfortunately, it is competition. So, but we are gonna see a lot of mortgage banks going under just for the fact that, again, the liquidity is not there. A lot of them have them backed up by hedge funds. A lot of them have backed up by margin. So a lot of those banks did get margin calls, and we will see some of those banks disappear. The smaller banks, the correspondent banks like this, not Freedom Mortgage. Freedom Mortgage is doing wonderful. We're getting updates from our president and owner every morning. He looks happy and like he's making money.
Good. So one question, because we have to move on. We have our guest over here, Jay Pitts. He's going to jump on. You're welcome to stay on too, Dimitri. So a question came from Ivana. She just you could just touch slightly on refinance. I'm sure that some people are concerned, but Ivana just said, can you touch on refinance? So what's going on in that area? So because sometimes clients want to know.
The refinance market is going. We had a big push in applications towards the end of March, basically the whole March, let's just call it that. All those applications are going through right now. Of course, everything is moving on the slower side just for the fact that there's just too much application. So the processors who are handling 30 files now are handling 60 files. Our bank just hired 9 new underwriters just to handle this load, so we wouldn't have this bottleneck. We were lucky enough to lock a lot of those rates in the beginning, something that we usually don't do, where we lock the rates in the beginning of the process. In this case, we were advised to do so, and we did, because the rates did go up since then. We are hoping for the rates to calm down a bit, so we do expect a second wave of refis coming in. A lot of our clients were lucky enough to build some equity in the homes, and they were able to pull out that equity. Again, give you an example, somebody just bought exactly last summer, and that person put in 5%. She did a great renovation. She refied it, and now we pulled out $130,000. And since the rate is less, and she's not paying any more mortgage insurance, she's paying $60 less from whatever she was paying, and she pulled out $130,000 in cash.
Wow.
It's just with every client, we try to, we work out the best case scenario. If somebody was paying for 5 years, we'll work out for that mortgage to the new refinance to be 25 years. We'll give them, they won't be saving $400 a month, they'll be saving $250, but they're still paying less and paying off this mortgage at the same time. So if anybody is interested in refi, there's a scenario for everybody. Might not be a case where let's submit right now. We might say, hey, listen, in 3 months, this is what we're going to need to do. That's what we really are trying to do with everybody we can.
Got it. And then one last question, Cynthia asked, just to touch on those mortgage rates, because I think a lot of people are confused and, about, including myself, you're hearing so many, conflicting things about where the rates are at and where they're going. Can you just quickly tell us where do you think they're going, where they're at and where do you think they're going, just from your meetings that you're having? Because obviously,
I hear you. It really is a tough question to answer, just because the rates move so much. The volatility is phenomenal. Market is doing things like it hasn't done before. You guys seen it on the news where the oil contracts were down. They were in -30. I had my oil clients from Chase call me. He's like, hey, how do I buy these contracts? A lot of people are trying to get into something they don't know of because they hear things on Facebook and people are sharing. The rates are, let's call them in the mid-3s. But remember, rates will depend on what kind of loan to value there is. It depends what kind of credit score it is. It depends on what kind of product. If it's a co-op, it's a condo, it's a one family, two family. So it depends on all that. It's very hard to quote anybody right now. The differences are tremendous. So I could be locking somebody at 3.25 for one deal. At the same time, I'll be locking somebody at 4 for something different. It really depends on it. So if somebody's asking about rates, I do advise just say, hey, rates are somewhere in middle threes. For some people, it might be in the low threes. Some people will be in the high threes. But in order to get an exact number, you really need to speak to to a loan officer just to see the scenario. In my opinion, off the record, I think we're still gonna test out some lows.
Yeah.
Off the record.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. So, because we were talking about that early in the town hall, and we're about to pivot, guys, to our guest Jay Pitts. And early in the town hall, we talked about where the real estate market might be going, and naturally, I kept mentioning transition, and rates will probably have to dip down a little bit more to kind of stabilize the marketplace. But I think that there'll be a time where they can't lower rates anymore. And they have to just let the prices adjust a little bit. So I think that's a pretty fair statement, right, Dimitri?
It is. Just keep one thing in mind: the rates at this point are not really dependent on the market, and usually the rates are very dependent on 10-year Treasury. Right? That's the longest.
Yes. So I want you to say that very clear, so this way some of us can hear it some more time. The rates are not dependent on the market. What are they dependent on?
Before, there was always a rule. The market goes up, bond prices go down. When bond prices go down, yield goes up. That means the mortgage rates go up, right? That's the quick math. You don't need to remember. We always depended on the 10-year Treasury. When the market went down, the 10-year Treasury yield went up. When the market went down, Treasury yield went down as well. Since the market is doing something extremely phenomenal right now, and it's really not in any textbooks, it is in some, but in the technical ones. So the market is not relying as much on the usual market conditions. So right now we're looking at the MBS, the mortgage bonds. So they are making new lows, and yet the rates are not moving as much as they should be. That just shows that there's risk involved, and the banks are really holding those rates sort of hostage, if you want to call it, because they want to divert their risk. They don't want to offer too low of a rate and then get screwed. Banks are banks. That's how they make money, right? That's how
they make money. Yeah.
That's how guys like JB Diamond. That's how they control it. So they try to minimize the risk. That's why the rates where they are right now.
Well, Dimitri, thank you so much.
Fortunately enough, our president, the owner of our bank, he started in the servicing industry. So he wants to get as many loans as possible. That's why we're still, on some of these programs, we're still offering a much lower rate. Very proud when people shop us right now, that in some cases we offer 1/4 to 0.5% better, especially if you compare us to the big guys, to Chases, to cities like that, because they have to answer to their shareholders. We don't have shareholders.
Got it. Well, thank you for that information. Dimitri, thank you for your time. So we're going to get right in. Jay, you there, sir?
Yeah, I'm here.
How are you,
you,
sir?
man. I was unmuting.
Thank you. Well, really special guest over here, Jay Pitts and Associates. Jay, I know for a little while now. And so, Jay, the theme has been, and some of your buddies were on this line last week as well.
Yeah.
Basically what we're talking about is past, present, and future. So you might have caught some of the tail end over here with our lender that we use, just past, present, and future, because the goal of this is really to show people how someone like yourself, who started out as an individual, and give people some hope that no matter where the market goes, there's always opportunity to build their business. So that's kind of been the mission, past, present, and future. And of course, always hearing another guy like yourself really talk about what that future is going forward. So if we could sum that up in 20, 30 minutes, so
sure,
that would be helpful.
Well,
so let's talk about when, as an individual, what's that look like? when you got into the business as an individual. Kind of walk us through that.
Sure. Well, first and foremost, I want to thank you guys for having me. I appreciate the opportunity. Like Mike said, we go back a number of years, and I'll apologize in advance. I have one child watching a movie, another child doing schoolwork, and one napping. So if they come screaming through, I apologize for that. But we'll roll with it. So getting started, I will tell you the past. It's interesting. It's been a while since I've thought so much about my beginning in real estate, but it's really relevant right now because I got started. I really grew up in the real estate industry. My father's an agent and a team leader and was a Wall Street Journal, top 10 list team for transaction sides in a little bitty town in Kentucky. I think they did something like 620 transaction sides in like 2001 or something. So I did get to pay attention to that, but I was too young at the time to really have any sort of involvement. I just got to kind of watch it from the outside. I got into business in 2008, January of 2008, just before the market crashed and the Great Recession. And, I actually got out of lending. So hearing, your mortgage guy talk about rates, and that's a little bit of my past as well. But had a pretty good mortgage business built at the time and really just decided to pivot and had no foresight that the market was about to crash and just found myself in a kind of a pretty bleak situation.
So now that you said this was back in 2008? Yeah.
Yeah, in 2008, I moved from the mortgage business to real estate full time. And like I said, the market immediately shifted. So what I was looking at and faced with was, how do I make it? I don't have a business built. I'm in the process of just getting my feet wet. Not to mention, I was in a city, Louisville, which is the largest city, nothing like New York, but largest city in our state. And I didn't really know anybody. And so I was pretty young still. I was 25, 24 at the time. And so, yeah, it was pretty daunting, but we made it. We had success pretty quickly. I had success pretty quickly, and I started a team almost, probably 12 months in. I hired an administrator and my first agent on my team. So it just goes to show you how quickly it can start, given the right set of activities in even, the worst of markets.
Yeah, so now you hired an administrator right away after a year into it. And I know just from our chats, what was something that like you went after? So some of our other guests, they talked about what they went after, prospecting wise, because a lot of agents, they look to, we always hear the word prospecting, and some people talk about expireds and for sale by owners and Sphere. So I think agents really just like to hear, where did you get started? What else?
So what I did, in January of 2008, I went around to, they weren't in my brokerage because I was kind of on an island. I affiliated with a brokerage outside of my city, and I was like the only agent in my city. But I went around, I'm a RE/MAX agent now, I was then, and I went to RE/MAX agents around town that had bank foreclosure listings. And I, what little business I could scrounge up for myself, like in the first 30 days, just showing wise, not even offers and closings and that kind of thing. With business, I realized that there was a huge appetite from a buying perspective, a lot of inventory, opposite to what we have now, lots of inventory, very little demand, but the people buying all wanted huge discounts, and bank foreclosures were hot then. So they all wanted to see, I'd take them out and show them 7 or 8, investment opportunities. And I thought, why am I getting these opportunities? Well, it's because the agents that were listing the properties weren't returning the phone calls. They had too much inventory for them. They had a lot more work for the banks. So I said, hey, let me give me your sign calls, because sign calls are a big thing here, a little more rural, suburban environment. And I said, give me your sign calls and I'll pay you a 25% referral fee on anything I convert. And I closed 6 deals in my first 3 months that way. in 2008, and they were little prices, but it kept the lights on. And I picked up an internet lead that was, like little under $500,000, which is a really big price here. So I got about a $15,000 check there. And then I had my mortgage paid for a couple months. Did I mention I was a newlywed, and like my wife probably thought I was crazy because I quit a good job to go into one that barely was solvent. And so anyway, I turned those sign calls into about 6 deals, and then I caught a big one, which was nice. And then I kind of stepped back and I said, okay, I'm spending too much time running and showing. I need to take some listings. So I prospected the sign calls and follow-ups into 3 or 4 listings over the next 30 days. So by this time I'm like 4 months in the business. And every listing was overpriced. Not a single one of them would show. These are like retail sellers, right? Everybody's trying to get the price that they would have gotten like 24 months ago if they'd sold before the market took a dive. So nothing was showing, nothing was selling. I was like miserable again. I was like, okay, I'd had this little small amount of hope and window of success, and then fell on my face again. So then I figured, well, I got to find a way to list these bank foreclosures, and because that's the only listings that are selling. So I started prospecting. That's all I knew. It's like the sign call follow-ups, right? The LP Mama script, and like just learning. So I bought a few lists. I researched online. This was probably before it got really big, and then they'd start hiding their contact information, and I would just like blow their phones up, these asset managers, and they wouldn't talk to me. They wouldn't talk to me. And then ultimately I figured out what they really wanted. They were trying to get broker price opinions completed. I don't know if anybody's been in the business long enough to remember BPOs. They were a big thing, and they paid like dirt, and they took a long time, and it was terrible work, but it was something. And so I'm kind of a system builder by nature. So I built a system, and I did 20 BPOs a week for $40 a piece. And I thought, well, at least I make $800 a week. Like I can buy groceries maybe, and pay my student loans and that kind of thing. So anyway, I did that, and literally every time I completed a BPO, I'd pick up the phone and I'd call the person. And I'd say, hey, I just submitted the BPO. I want to make sure you don't have any questions. Is there anything I can do better? What do you need? Oh, by the way, who takes care of your listing inventory? And I would get like these phone numbers, and I'd just like try to schmooze them into giving me the contact information of the people that took care of the listings. And one became, then I got 1 listing, and then I got 2, and then I got 4. And then I picked up a contract, and then, Bank of America and VA, and then Chase, and then Fannie Mae. And then next thing you knew, by the end of year 2 in real estate, I sold 161 houses.
Wow.
So that's how, and that started really like about 6 months in of that first year. And that's why I was able to hire an administrator, and that's why I was able to hire my first agent, because I wasn't going to make the same mistake that those other agents made, not returning their sign calls. And so I hired an agent to just literally take the sign calls, and he sold like 30 homes his first year.
So now when you said sign calls, so this way we can just make sure everyone's got that. So you would just handle just the incoming calls from someone in your office, and you paid them 25% because they didn't want to deal with it.
Yeah, I'd literally go to the listing agent who's got the sign in the yard. Here, I don't know exactly, specifically your market, if this is not a thing. I mean, people pretty much now pull up their smartphone and go to Zillow or wherever, realtor.com, and you get internet leads like this, in 2008, sign calls, at least here.
But you know what, Jay, what's interesting is that if we could relate, and I'll tie this all in together for our agents on the call here, back then there wasn't a cost to the customer that was coming off the sign. It was just maybe a referral fee. But Zillow and realtor.com has put a cost on these things now. Yeah. And I know that some agents on this call might be on a team, or even teams that have a team. They may not necessarily be putting a cost on the customers coming through open houses or their own sign calls. And meanwhile, a person like yourself just getting started saw this as tremendous value, and you said, hey, I'll take your calls and I'll pay you a fee. And that's really interesting.
It's essentially like, for example, if you were like a mega agent without a team and you took a bunch of listings and you didn't really want to work the buy side of things quite as much, and you partnered with a junior agent in your office for a referral fee to take your internet leads or your sign calls or your open houses or your whatever. I mean, it's very similar for that time. I mean, it was just, for me, I was looking for anything that was free or very cheap, okay, because there was not much money coming in. And I just said, and I want to pay when there are results. Like, hey, but the great thing about this is that referral fee was only good for one deal, right? For those agents, they got something when they would have gotten nothing. But those people are now in my database. Those people I've listed that home, I've sold them homes, I've gotten referrals. I've built an entire business on that foundation that started, and there's other things. We do a lot of things that are much more technical and highly, innovative now. But back then the sky was falling. I mean, I remember literally the day, that I heard that like Bear Stearns was closing and like Lehman Brothers, and you guys are a lot closer to Wall Street than me, so maybe you guys remember that better. But I mean, to me, like, I didn't know that the economy would as a young kid, I didn't know that the economy was going to continue in the same way that I'd always known. So I needed to pay my bills.
Mm-hmm. No, again, actually, I think it's very relevant to not only our market, but to what we all believe is we're heading into a transitional time. We hope that the sky doesn't fall out, but clearly we're heading towards a transitional market, and you're giving some hope here to a lot of the agents on the call now, because I think what's happened, our industry, Jay, makes people feel really, really bad. They get into the industry for 2 months, and if they're not killing it or hitting home runs, you didn't get the trophy this year. They feel like they got to do something. They got to go get more and more listings, But the reality is this. Jay Pitts right here has been saying he did broker BPOs for $40 a pop just because he was trying to build something. Because something's better than nothing, right, Jay? I mean, I joke around.
Well, to me, the money was the icing on the cake. I was putting in the sweat equity to get the introduction to the decision maker. And I ended up selling 2,000 REOs in my career, 2,000 REO listings, and it started with $40. It probably took me 2 hours a piece. Like, I spent a lot of time doing those.
Yeah, and that's the challenge, right? Is that most agents, I was just going to say, most agents or business people, they want to quickly make that big pop, but I think what's helped a lot of people in our groups that started back in 2008 is that we learned that there was no such thing at that time as a quick pop. So we got to go do whatever we can, go show the property 100 times. I was installing stoves for people. I was doing some crazy things.
It's hard, man. It's hard.
You were just trying to make something happen. I remember carrying a stove with a buddy of mine in a condo building from the first floor to the third floor because the builder couldn't afford to buy a stove, and appraisals were needed a stove. They needed a stove that actually functioned. So we carried a stove up the stairs.
So you moved it from one unit to the next.
We did the whole building. We had one stove that, by the way, was in my buddy's garage. He's a firefighter, and luckily, he had these big pickup truck. Because in New York, we don't have a lot of friends that have big pickup trucks. It's a big pickup truck. We put the stove in the back. We hauled it into to this property, and we used that stove on each appraisal. So we're thinking outside the box. So, any stories you could share before we kind of go into the present? Any stories you could share? I mean, you probably got a million.
I didn't even get to the best part of the REO story. So I said I picked up Bank of America as a client. They were my biggest client at the time. And after about 6 months, so about month 9 of being in the real estate business. Well, no, I take that back. That was about the end of the first year. They had quickly become my biggest client. I was selling like 8 to 10 homes a month for them. Now, these are little bitty prices, not like what you guys are used to. These are like $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 homes, and I'm making like $1,500 a pop. But it's still a lot of money for me then, right? And they required that you change the locks, take out all the personal belongings, clean the property, winterize the property. Basically, I had to spend a bunch of money. Well, I was spending I was making $1,500 per property, and I was spending $2,500 per property.
Oh my goodness.
And this is internet business was not phenomenal then. And so like they had this archaic method of like you fax in your reimbursement request. Well, they kept like finding reasons to decline, and this went on like 6 months. So I'm selling 10 houses a month for them at $1,000 a piece loss for 6 months.
Wow.
And I think actually, yeah, it was like 60 grand they owed me. And if the sales had stopped, I wouldn't have been able to float the losses because I'm getting the contractors to cut deals with me to like pay them a little at a time because I didn't have it. And they knew up front. And then it got to the point where Bank of America, actually it was Countrywide at the time, but Bank of America bought Countrywide. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, of
And
course.
Countrywide was the one that wasn't paying me. And I literally thought I was going to have to sue my best client for like 60 grand to get my money so I could pay the contractors. So they didn't sue me. And then my client was going to fire me and I was going to be back to square one. But then I remember it vividly. It was the end of that first year because it was in December. 3 days in a row, I got a 25, a 25, and a $10,000 check 3 days in a row from Countrywide. And all my money was back and I paid all my contractors and it was smooth sailing after that. But like, as if it wasn't tumultuous enough trying to figure out how to build a business in these circumstances, they were stiffing me for 60 grand. So,
Wow.
but that's my story. And I figure if I got through that, then, at that young an age and no experience, then, I can figure out how to get through this.
So I'm going to share just a 30 seconds over here about my story. So hopefully maybe you could share it with the group. Some people know this story, but during that time, 2008, 2009, 2010, there was always this doubt, right? And I talk about the stove. I kind of have like a trauma around this condo project because it was a condo projects I thought that were going to launch my career into being this huge agent. And little did I know those 3 developers, there were 3 different ones, they were all going broke. So I put all my eggs in one basket. And but was there any self-doubt? Was there any doubt in your mind? Because I remember sitting inside this condo project, 10 units, no heat. Every day something was happening in this building, some leak, some craziness. And I remember just sitting down, almost having a meltdown because we didn't have smartphones then. So I know it sounds crazy. In 2008, we didn't have a phone where you could sit and just start scrolling and keeping yourself busy. I remember just sitting there for 2 hours, freezing with no heat, hoping that someone would show up to the appointment. And I started doubting myself and doubting myself in my career in real estate. And I'd already been in the business a few years. And what was interesting, what helped me, I thought about a friend of mine. Really, this always sticks out for me. A buddy of mine worked for the gas company, and he got home every day at 4 o'clock, and it always sounded so rosy. And just so happened, he would call me at 4 o'clock, and I would be on an appointment waiting for a customer that didn't show up on time. And I remember saying, "Wow, my goodness, this guy makes a very good income, and I'm sitting here. We're probably making the same at that point." And I had this doubt. So was there anything, because what I think the challenge as entrepreneurs is that we go up and down. I'll speak for myself personally, especially when the market gives us a little bit of a movement, right? So can you offer any hope or any ways that you cope with this? Or, hey, if it was perfect, just share.
No, man. I mean, as you're speaking, I'm hearing, thinking in my mind of those moments. There was a ton of self-doubt, frankly, a ton. I thought I'd made a horrible mistake. I was making, 6 figures at a very young age in the mortgage business. And, that industry was in bad shape too. So, I mean, it wasn't like going backwards was an option. And had I stayed, there was no guarantee that it would have continued to be good. So, looking back on it, it was probably the right move to strike out on my own. But yeah, dude, there were moments like in the midst, you just got the rosy version of that story. There were moments where, I would sit, because literally my schedule was this. I would get up early. And a lot of the properties I was selling at the time were in really bad parts of town with high crime rates. And it was a lot safer to go really early in the morning to do the pictures and all the things. And so I would go do that. about 9:30, 10 o'clock, I would get to my office. I had this little like 8x8 room that I rented from a business center, so I didn't have to work out of my house. Back then, I thought that was important. That's, I've been working out of my house for 6 weeks now, so not as big a deal. But I would get there and I would prospect in the morning. I would call all the sign calls, right? I would call every lead I had twice a day. I would call all morning from like 9 to lunch, and then I'd go eat lunch at this little deli on the corner. It was like cheap because I didn't have any money. And then I'd go back to my office, and if I didn't have appointments to show in the afternoon, I'd prospect all afternoon or show property. And then I would leave probably at like 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'd ride by all the houses that I was doing BPOs on and take all my pictures on the way home. And then I'd eat dinner with my wife, and then I'd go back to my office at home and I'd type BPO orders all night until about 11 o'clock. And then I'd go to bed, do it again. And dude, there were so many moments like in that like little office downtown where I would just literally shut the door and just sit there. Like, what the hell did I do? There were moments at night after my wife would go to bed and I was still working, thinking like, what have I done? I just got married and we got this debt I got to pay. I don't really know. I mean, like coping, I would say that being in action was always what helped me. Like if I was feeling like really terrible, like I'd pick up the phone and call somebody, and I knew I could contribute something to them. And that sort of contribution always took me out of my funk that I was in. Another thing I was really big on, I actually got one of my first deals ever this way, is I wrote a lady a handwritten note after. One trick I always used to do is I wouldn't let you off the phone without you giving me a home address, which I know now sounds like really creepy. But like, if you ask, people will tell you. And I would literally just write little like dollar store thank you note with a business card and just drop it in the mail. And I had like stacks of these next to my desk. And I would write a little note, I'd pick up the phone and make a call. And like, still to this day, I do that stuff when I don't know what to do. Like sometimes now I'm so busy. I mean, we're doing like, 900 deals a year. And it's like, where do I go next? Like, I don't know which direction to go. And it's like, if I don't know, I pick up the phone or I sit down and write a note. And that stuff has really helped steady me over the years, regardless of whatever I'm going through.
That's interesting. Yeah. You just write. So, but you stay moving, right? It's kind of like in the health space.
It's always something, man.
Yeah. In the health, right? Trainers say, what's the goal? You just got to keep moving. Right. So yeah. That's in health or exercise rather, and I guess that's a good way to look at entrepreneurship in the real estate space. Just keep moving.
Well, it's just, I don't know. I mean, there's time for quiet, there's time for reflection, there's time for focus and all that. But like, if I'm in a bad way, none of that's possible. So let's do something. Let's get out of this negative and move into something positive. The quickest way I know how to do that is do something proactive.
And that's interesting because there's a couple of agents that consistently use this quote, like, don't mistake movement for progress. But I think that's a slightly flawed, because in this case right here, if you're in a funk, you got to keep moving.
Progress is never made in the midst of negativity. So I mean, you got to shed that negativity first.
Yeah. So now, as hopefully, would you mind another 10 minutes or so? You got 10 minutes? Good. Okay. I mean,
my child's not screaming, so we're good.
Got it. So I just want to be respectful of your time and everybody else here. So the question now, as we pivot into the present during these tough times and in the future, we can kind of overlap the two. So walk us through. You really built out this business. You went from zero, and your team's pretty large now, and now you got all these 900 deals a year. Where present now, COVID, and then kind of walk us through what you guys are doing to prepare for the future. What's your present situation like now? Are you guys under emergency order over there?
We're under extreme social distancing. We are an essential business, so we are allowed to conduct business. Our physical office is closed. There is no staff there. Agents are not going there. Everybody's working remotely.
I'm going to interrupt because I just have to have some disclaimers here on the recording. So, guys, you understand Jay's in another market in a whole other state. So this is not guidance. You know, earlier today we had legal guidance you could have gotten from Brooklyn MLS from Ralph Fazio. So anything that's being shared here is just is what Jay's going through in his marketplace. And, you know, Remax says currently at the current time we are not allowed to work. And if you're trying to get the guidance, you know, please continue on with our COVID updates with Al Fazio. So, but what I would like you to pay attention now is got the disclaimer is possibly what it's going to look like when we come out of this, because so that's why I'm going to segue back to you, Jay, because we're in the non-essential category, but I don't believe, Jay, personally. I think it's going to look at probably what you guys are doing, and I think there's going to be the quote unquote the new norm, which is extreme social distance, because you know we don't have any vaccine. So now segue back to you. Tell us what you guys are going through in your market.
Well, so, you know, specifically our market is a much lower median sale price, I would guess, than where you guys are. Homes are incredibly affordable. That's my opinion. And so we have a lot of demand. Okay. We have a very, very small amount of supply, especially at our median price range. So in a lot of ways, we haven't slowed down as much as maybe I feared we would. So what I'm coaching is proactive, safety first. Okay. But proactivity. Okay. So it kind of goes back to, I mean, you can see my philosophy in remaining proactive. If they're comfortable, if our agents are comfortable showing property and their clients, and they've got the proper disclosures signed, because we have safety disclosures that we're having every client signed. It says that they're, you know, they're willing to go out and do business.
So safety disclosures, did that come from, because these are
we
some
have
hot topics. Did that come from you?
We've got a legal team.
MLS? Yep. Okay.
Yeah,
good.
we've got a legal team. Yeah, this is an I'm willing to look at properties and I understand the risks, or I'm willing to have my home on the market and show it and I understand the risks. Like that's basically, we're only having disclosure signed by our clients. Some people have gone as far as having a disclosure signed from like, if we have a property listed, having every buyer sign a disclosure that comes in with another agent. We haven't gone that far. Our legal counsel did not advise us to go that far as of yet. Now, there are contract disclosures coming from the MLS that they're suggesting you use in contracts that we're writing now to allow for extensions of time based on COVID-related circumstances. Not a huge fan of that personally. That's my opinion, just because I think a buyer and seller can get together on that stuff if there are delays, and there are measures already in our contract. But we want our clients to know that we're going to take every precaution. We want our agents have all been briefed on all of that, you know, from masks.
Your agents currently, are they wearing masks at the showings?
Yes.
Yeah.
They're wearing masks.
What about, go ahead. Yeah, were they wearing masks?
Yeah, masks, gloves. They've been advised to dispose of gloves after every showing. You know, don't handle your cell phone and your personal items while you're wearing the gloves. Take, you know, sanitizing wipes and sprays, and, you know, sanitize doorknobs and light switches and all that stuff. Like, we've given them, you know, a workshop and training on all that stuff. And with that information and the proper disclosure sign, if they're willing to go show property or go on listing appointments, then they're welcome to do so. They're independent contractors, and they understand the risks, and they're afforded those opportunities given the right set of circumstances. We're all obviously encouraging them to do as much as they can remote, to preview vacant properties for clients, and you use technology to do that. But we just understand that some people are not comfortable with buying and selling without seeing and smelling and, you know, being there. So I do think that where we're headed is a situation that is much more accepting of virtual kind of options. But I don't personally believe that it becomes the norm and replaces in-person viewings. I think maybe conducting those viewings in such a way that respects social distancing guidelines is probably more the norm for now.
Yeah, that's that, and I appreciate you sharing that, because that could be a glimpse into our future here in New York, especially, you know, given the number of cases. So we know in New Jersey, the limited number of people. So is that happening where you're at now? So are you able to have open houses if the agent is okay with having an open house, or an owner?
To be frank, I don't know if we're allowed to. I don't know that we've been disallowed from having open houses. I made the call early on to not allow any of our agents to conduct public open houses. You know, what we've found is that certain people are much more respectful of social distancing guidelines than others, like the clients. And I've just told my agents that they need to be careful. They need to, if a client shows up with, you're not putting anybody in your car. I don't know if that's a reality of you guys. We don't really do that anyway, even here, but like we drive separate. Okay. If I had an agent call me yesterday that one of his very good clients came to a showing, he's got a 3-week-old baby. He's got a mask. He's keeping his distance. He's doing whatever. They show up like it's a party. There's 4 people in the car. None of them live together. It's like friends and aunts, and and it's just like he was frustrated. And I just said, look, man, I mean, different people attack this situation very differently. You just need to keep your distance and conduct yourself the way that is safe for you. And if you don't want to show them property anymore, then just respectfully tell them that you're not going to show them property anymore. And that is kind of the tack that we've taken. So we officially cannot have gatherings of larger than 10. And even in gatherings of 10, you're advised by the governor, executive order, to keep a minimum of 6 feet, and everyone's supposed to wear a mask.
Interesting.
Per executive order from the governor.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's kind of where I think is a preview as to where New York will go. We have a lot more challenges to that because we have, 17 protected classes. So one of the concerns that were brought up during panels, and by the way, guys, this is not legal advice. This is just something that was brought up in a panel discussion that, as you mentioned, the homeowner didn't see these folks protecting themselves. It was the homeowner, right? And then he got a little bit uneasy because they weren't wearing their masks. Was that what happened with the homeowner? And he said, so this could happen. And as we mentioned before you got on the call, Jay, it's a matter of pacing. It's a matter of pacing yourself. So, yeah, I know we're running out of time here. Any time for just telling us a quick bit of the future outside of pandemic, not necessarily economic future? Where do you see just, portals going? Any discussions that you can help with our agents here? We talk a lot about video and video being a big part of our business, but you just give like one nugget for our agents if they had to go out and do one thing right now, taking out the pandemic piece and thinking about what they could do as they advance in the industry.
That's an interesting question. Everything is so colored by the circumstances that we're in right now. I do believe that just a couple of hot topics. I do believe that portals are here to stay. I do believe that, the market always dictates who the players are. So, if you're in a seller's market where demand exceeds supply, you're always going to have discounters. I think, the millennial generation is demanding that things change. They make up 35% of the buyer's market already. A staggering, they make up 25% of the seller's market nationwide already, believe it or not. They're 1 in 4 sellers despite how young their youth. So I think behaviorally you have to watch what the millennial expectations are, and that's going to tell you where to be in the marketplace. Companies like Zillow and Realtor.com, they provide a lot of service to the client the way that they want it. And when you strip away the sales kind of environment, the customer's more comfortable getting their information there. I don't know. I think there's always going to be a place for real estate agents, full service, full fee real estate agents that are high level practitioners. So I wouldn't worry about these things. I would roll with the punches. I'm not an alarmist. I'm one of these guys that likes to take advantage of how the market changes.
Very nice. Do we have time for at least 1 or 2 questions from everybody?
Sure.
If not, I understand. Guys, as we mentioned in the past, I'll keep talking a little bit more to wrap with Jay. ask your questions in the chat. If you want to engage with Jay, just tell me in the chat. If not, then I'll say your question and Jay will answer it. Cool. So I'll give you guys time to brew up a question or two. But Jay, yeah, it's interesting. Roll with the punches. I saw Realtor.com put some live stream option where you can the customer can have an option to live stream the tour. Zillow did something very similar. So it's very interesting as what this pivot's going to look like when everybody comes out of this. So
well, what you had seen, they went from the direct connect, Zillow did, right? The direct phone connect to the request a showing. I mean, you see them make these very small changes, seemingly to meet consumers' needs. Now they have they've morphed that to request virtual viewing. So like any sort of copy change or color change or location, with on the site, like they're testing consumers to get maximum engagement. So if the consumer wants a virtual showing, Zillow's going to find a way to give it to them. That's why you see the 3D tours and all that.
Well, I didn't see a lot of questions pop up. I didn't see any questions actually. We had some shot. We had some shy. I got something, but I wanted to say what you said over here. Zillow and Realtor.com made changes, and it just reminds me of we're small business owners. So what that means is that we can beat somebody big like that, because if a customer in our local markets wants something, we should give it to them, right? If they want virtual tours, if they want 3D, if they want live streams, if they want it Facebook, over here we have WeChat and Instagram and YouTube, we should just give it to them. So so I like that. That was a great point to, pay attention to what your consumers want, and you might be able to beat out, big companies, because those big companies are on scale, not on a micro level. So Caitlin asked a question. So he said, what's one advice that you may work best this time to take new listings? So the challenge, Jay, is, we're under lockdown, and over here it actually said we're not allowed to solicit homeowners. So maybe you can give me a little bit off the cuff over here. We're not allowed to, we can't circle prospect technically. We can't call expireds. So what would be your advice to try to take new listings at this point?
That's what I would have said would have been, I think there's a lot of canceled and expired listings in the marketplace right now that, being the second or third agent sometimes is what is necessary to get a consumer's perspective in the right place, right? Sometimes it's better to be the second agent. When this situation separated people from their agent for whatever reason, if you get the opportunity to where you can solicit, I would take a hard look at early canceled and expired listings. Now, you want to do so, you want to respect the fact you can't cross the sign, and you want to be careful that you're not, reaching out to people that are under active listing agreements. But I think there is an opportunity there. If we're restricting, for sell by owner and expired prospecting, I would say sphere of influence, there is so much information out there. What I'm telling my people, there's so much misinformation. I'm telling people that you don't have to be the authority on the virus and the pandemic, right? You don't have to know what the newest study says, but you should be someone that can advise on how it impacts the real estate market. And even if it's just as simple to a call to a past client saying, hey, I just wanted to chat with you. You may be wondering how all this impacts your home values. Here's what we're seeing in your zip code. Here's what we're seeing in your particular neighborhood or township, or, here's what happened. Here's what that house one block over sold for. What we're seeing is that this is happening or that's happening. And I'm more than happy to follow up with you and let you know how it progresses. I'd double down on relationships is what I would do.
Yeah. And maybe those notes, those personal handwritten notes that you were saying, because according to, this was, again, a lot of misinformation. It's a non-solicitation of phone calls, but so far really hasn't had a clarification, meaning doesn't mean we couldn't mail to someone's house. So yeah. I think personal handwritten notes.
Can you not call your like a past client Like you're
You
not
can call it
soliciting
sphere.
them for
Yeah, yeah,
business. You're
it's,
trying to
it's
talk to them.
basically, yeah, and that's kind of the, the interesting part is you're not soliciting if you're calling for the business, and that's one thing, but to check on somebody, I don't know if it's, especially if it's a past client or a family member or
Yeah.
friend. We always talk about how many people we have on our Facebook page. If there's 1,000 people on our page, or whether some of the agents use WhatsApp, some people using WeChat, Instagram. So how many people do you actually reach out to from that page personally? So that's always what
I mean,
that's always what I ask. And it said you
if you
can't
have
call.
time.
Yeah, so if you say you can't call, well, if they're friends on Facebook, why can't you send a direct message on Facebook and say, hey, how are you? Are you open to a phone call? And same dialogue, LinkedIn page. So many people use it. So I think that's where I try to share with our agents, think outside the box. They didn't, all they said was you can't solicit, new business by phone call. It didn't say that you couldn't have a conversation via Facebook, via LinkedIn, something like that. So what other questions we have, guys? Because, Jay is definitely a little bit over time. And thank you, Jay. Anybody else have any questions? Let's see. There's at least one more. Sworn over New York since I have requested to show places on the list, but I can't take pics of those places. Oh, so this is a good last question. We'll finish with this because I know how you operate, Jay. The agent asks is it smart to start working with buyers as the market transitions? What do you say to that? Is it smart to start working with more buyers than sellers? What would you comment?
I think that we're in a place, and I'm speaking for my market because I don't know the inventory, the supply situation where you're at. I don't believe that this will shift us from a seller's to a buyer's market. Keeping current matters, which I don't know if you follow that, Mike, but
yeah,
had an interesting graphic the other day where something like 73% of buyers, as a result of COVID-19, expect a substantial reduction in price on a property they would buy, but something like 93% of sellers don't anticipate reducing price. So you have this kind of like this hard-headed kind of conflict here. I would probably where I'm at in my market, I would over-index on listings because of the disparity between demand and supply. And that's where I'm at in my business anyway. I'm not doing a lot of showings. I'm doing more, coaching and leading and training. And if I'm going to get myself knee deep in sales again, it's going to be on the listing side. That's where I'm going to advise my more experienced agents. But if you're a new agent and you're really at a place where you have to find it, you find it wherever it is. And buyers, this should shift, the power to the buyer slightly, but I don't think it's going to tip the scale. I think the sellers still hold. I think there's some very socioeconomic reasons that is right, but that's probably too much to get into now. I just think we're going to still have. I think we're still going to be short of supply when this is all set.
Yeah, and it's something that I've been focusing on with our agents is that transition. So that butt up is transition, and we're going to see where this all winds up. But during that time, though, there'll certainly be sellers selling, buyers buying, because we still have the demand. We are New York City, and yes, there are businesses that might close down, but people still want a place to live, and it's a huge part of our growth GDP. So I think that we'll be okay, but it's there'll be some transition. So it'll be very interesting to see. Yeah. So, but Jay, listen, I don't want to keep this going because you've been definitely more than generous with your extra time you've given us over here. Really, thank you for your time, and seriously, stay safe and your family. And guys, give it up to Jay for give a little Zoom clap. Thank you, Jay, so much. Appreciate your time, and look forward to talking to you soon. Okay.
Absolutely. Welcome, guys.
Hey, guys.
Hopefully it was helpful in some way.
Thank you. It definitely was. Thanks.
Thank you,
Thanks,
guys.
Jay.